So we're announcing a new D&D product, a book coming out this spring. It is called Tales from the Yawning Portal, and it's a collection of 7 of the most famous dungeons from Dungeons and Dragons history, and they're all collected in one hardcover book. And the idea behind it is not only do we want to capture some of the most famous dungeons from the game's history, but we also wanted to give a selection of adventures that you could, in theory, start at level 1 with the first dungeon and play all the way up to level 15 by playing the adventures one after another. So we want a nice broad range of levels to give DMs content they can drop into their campaigns, either to extend something. Say if you finish Storm King's Thunder and your character's level 10 or 11, there's adventures in there that you can start playing. Or if you just want something that's a bit of a sidetrack from your current campaign. So the adventures span almost every edition. The first 2 for low-level characters, there's the Sunless Citadel and the Forge of Fury. And if you played 3rd edition, you might remember those as the first 2 adventures released for the 3.0 version of the game. When you get more to mid-levels, we have a couple adventures from AD&D. If you played back in the early 80s and late 70s, you might recognize some of these titles. There's White Plume Mountain. There's Hidden Shrine of Tomoichin. And then there's a newer adventure. Actually, we drew from the period sort of when we had announced 5th edition. We're doing playtests. There's an adventure called Dead in Thay, which featured this really huge dungeon. And everyone who played it thought the dungeon was great. But it was kind of part of a broader campaign. So we decided to just take the dungeon from Dead in Thay and place that in this book. And it's this enormous sort of like madhouse built by by the Red Wizards of Thay. So this kind of gives you a chance to dive into sort of a classic Mad Wizards dungeon. So those are the ones that will take you through the mid-levels. And then the upper tiers of play, we have 2 very classic adventures, 2 of my favorites. Going back to AD&D, late 70s, we have the Collected Against the Giants. And then would also, to cap it off, if your characters have made it to 13th, 14th level, and hopefully you're not too attached to them because the final adventure in the collection is the Tomb of Horrors. The original, one of the deadliest dungeons ever made, updated to 5th edition, as are all the adventures. So one of the fun things about the adventure was we kind of thought, how do we come up with a reason for why all these adventures would be put in one place? And we thought we could just publish, Adventure Compendium number 1 or something like that, and that would work. But we wanted to do something that was a little more interesting. So we thought to ourselves, these adventures were originally placed in a variety of different settings in D&D's history. Some were in Greyhawk, some really weren't attached to a setting, some were in the realms. And so we thought, if there's any place where you could go to hear stories of these dungeons, it'd be the Yawning Portal in Waterdeep, in the Forgotten Realms. And the idea is that, while obviously, most people who go to the Yawning Portal are from natives of the Forgotten Realms, there are still sometimes either planar travelers or adventurers who've been to other worlds. Like, that's kind of where powerful adventurers congregate and talk. And so, kind of just like Mordenkainen spells have moved from world to world, so too have stories of these dungeons been told time and again across the different worlds of D&D. So the idea is that if you're an adventurer, like if you're in the Yawning Portal late at night, this might be the kind of story, like, the Tales, the Tomb of Horrors or something like that. That'd be the kind of thing that if you can get Durnan, the barkeep of the Yawning Portal, actually get him to talk to you, he's not exactly the most friendly guy. This might be the kind of story he'll tell you about. Either he's heard about it, or somehow maybe he's experienced it firsthand. But it's kind of this idea that the Yawning Portal is sort of, even across the different worlds of D&D, it's probably like one of the most known and most frequented places for adventurers of all stripes. Short of someplace out, say, in the plains, like in Sigil. With the artwork, what we did was we went back and all the adventures someone in the department had played. So what we tried to do was capture really critical moments of the adventure, things that were really memorable, and either things that maybe there was art originally in adventure that we could, update, or things that maybe hadn't been caught in art before that we wanted to feature. So for instance, there's one piece of art in the Hidden Shrine of Tomoichin. You have the chance to play this like sort of ancient sport that the Aztec-inspired culture that built the tomb. There's sort of a trap you can trigger where you have to play a game against like these spirits. And so that, from you and I played through, it was a really memorable, cool part of the adventure. So we captured that in one of the new pieces of art, showing the ball, like when the trap activates, when there's a ball you have to sort of smack into a goal, it starts to levitate and float around. And so we captured that. And that's what kind of the fun part about working on these adventures is, usually when you're making a new adventure, you have an idea based on the playtesters about what's interesting and iconic, but you are kind of guessing. With these adventures, since we already know, it's kind of fun to just go back and go, okay, we know this is one of the traps or NPCs that people will talk about, or people have talked about when they played it. So it made going through the art a little easier for us, rather than to try to figure out what we think would be cool or memorable. We know that ahead of time. So, and having played through all these adventures, it's fun being able to bring them to life based on my memories of them and seeing them. So, I keep using the word remaster, but that's how I kept thinking of it. Updating it to modern publishing standards. The book will be on store shelves on April 4th.
Thanks for watching. I'm Todd Kenner. You can follow me right here on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and just about everywhere else. Thanks.